Hello, everybody. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Martin Loffers. I'm the Chief Trend Watcher of Supply Chain Media. You might also know me as the Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Movement, European Quarterly, and European website and newsletter. I will be the moderator of this interesting webinar, interactive webinar. We're going to discuss the very important topic, how to control trade compliance across your supply chain. And I have a great expert for this in this webinar. So you see myself on the left, that's me, Martin Loffers, like I said. And next to me, I have Dan Ipsen, Managing Director of Pincvision. Dan?
Hello, everybody.
All right. Before we continue on the subject itself, everybody is on mute. This webinar will be recorded, and the presentation will be made available as PDF within 48 hours, mostly within 24 hours. There will be a Q&A at the end. Just 5 minutes before 5 o'clock CET. So you can wait for that, but also you can ask your questions immediately. You see on the right-hand side, you see a chat function, so you can talk to each other among the audience. And you see Q&A, and there I would like you to ask the questions. If the questions are in line of discussion Dan and me are having at that moment, I will make sure that I'll ask this question right away to keep it interactive. So don't hesitate to ask questions. It's one thing. And we have an AirMe at the end, a Q&A at the end. But also after 5, we have the opportunity to talk further in AirMeet, like a Zoom meeting. So Dan and I will sit down in AirMeet at table 1, so you can have a further discussion with Dan and myself, or among each other as the participants. So please join us if you have more questions. But otherwise, you can have the questions during the webinar itself. All right, Dan, can you introduce yourself? What's your background, and what are you responsible for right now?
Yes, I started my career in logistics in my native country of Denmark, working for a couple of the larger logistics companies in the space, before I moved abroad to try to expand my horizon, both professionally and personally. Over the years, I worked in the Netherlands, as well as West Africa in Sierra Leone, and I think those experiences grew my knowledge and my level of experience and expertise in terms of what I can bring to a company, but also very much in terms of my own personal growth. I came back again to the Netherlands after Sierra Leone, where I built a time-critical division within a Dutch forwarder that's now been taken over by Jeffco. Across 8 countries, we were taken over after a successful first year of that. Afterwards, I went to Uber in 2016. I was initially brought on with the approach of handling the logistics for one single project at Uber. But yeah, logistics is easier when you do all of it. But it doesn't work to just do a part of it. So we were able to expand our team from 2 to a total of 30 at its highest point, and eventually handling all the internal logistics within Uber. We embedded ourselves as a critical part of both the procurement and supply chain decisions at Uber, and through that, the company gained an insight into that trade compliance was important. So eventually, they established a global trade compliance team who we worked very closely with. So in short, I think I've been in the shoes of most of you on the call today, dealing with complex questions and issues on, be it procurement, Incoterms, classification, transport, logistics, trade compliance issues, or global tax schemes, and how all of that affects the well-being of your business and the bottom line. In January, I started Pincvision UK together with the Pincvision group, to bring our automated and integrated solutions to the British market. So today I'm here speaking to you on behalf of the entire Pincvision group.
All right. About Pincvision itself. So Supply Chain Media has published the IT Supermet already for years, and you might have seen it. There are all the well-known software vendors are positioned over there in ERP, WMS, TMS, etc., etc. And also Pincvision, it has been positioned since a few years on the upper left corner. As you can see, the core is global trade management. We will discuss that subject further. Also, execution platform with documentation. We also talk about that. And also on visibility, the green line, to make sure where it is. All right, we have a short video ready, so we'll play it right now to explain further what Pincvision is doing, but also how it relates to trade compliance. Let's see if it works. I have a problem with the video. Well, I think that the people have to go to the website for this interesting video itself. Always tests. Yeah. No, we shouldn't wait for it. Sorry. Sorry, Dan. Let's do it another time. But we have more great content and more things to discuss, I think. So let's move over. So together with Supply Chain Media, Pincvision has created a process map of trade compliance. So Dan, can you explain a bit more about that?
Yeah. So the illustration that we see here, as you said, is the process map for trade compliance. The outside of the circle shows the stakeholders in the supply chain in an average organization. Each line within the circle, based on the color diagram in the left corner, covers all the processes involved in trade compliance process within the organizations. So from duties, the Incoterms, VAT compliance and environmental compliance, along with the rest there. The way you have to read the circle is that each process starts with a flat point on the line. For instance, the R&D section in the bottom left corner of the circle. And as the line progresses, each bullet point represents the involved departments within your organization. And where the line terminates in an arrow is where the trade compliance process for that particular topic ends. So
it's quite a spaghetti if I look at it.
Very much so, very much so. But the trade compliance process within companies is very complex and intertwined.
Yeah.
I think if you look at an example of paying import duties, which would typically be done by your finance team, that's related to your origin of products, which are coming from the manufacturing or purchasing side. That same origin data is used in your customs declarations. It's used in your export documents, all prepared or instructed by your supply chain team or your logistics team. So if your organization has multiple production locations across the globe, you can see significant strategic opportunities in that field as well.
Yeah, and you know, you see here internal processes and an internal exchange of documentation, but you know the supplier is involved and also the end customer, and that will be you know getting more and more that you know this exchange between suppliers internally and externally, you know, that should be done quicker, you know, to you know shorten lead times all over.
Absolutely, yeah. It's if you add in the external world, then it only becomes more complex in terms of how all these processes are intertwined and who they affect as you look at everything from a bird's eye view.
Yeah, and you know, especially you know, more and more company has outsourced manufacturing and logistics, so you know, the connection with the external parties is becoming even greater now.
Yeah.
So let's talk about compliance and potential risks. Can you name some potential risks?
Yes, it's there on this slide. There are a number of risks that intertwine and go together. If you look at incorrect broker instructions, it can lead lead on to incorrect declarations, delay your current shipments. If it starts becoming a trend, you'll be subject to customs audits. It can increase physical checks, delayed future shipments, failed audits can also bring with it heavy fines. You will have less happy customers because of your delays in the supply chain, and ultimately failed audits can lead to an inability to import into a certain country, leading to brand damage, not being able to be present in that market for your customers.
So what do you see as the biggest risk at the moment?
I think one of the biggest things that's very hot topic these days is the environmental obligations that are levied on a lot of companies around the world. They come with strict international and national regulations. They're often tough to comply with and tough to get a grip on. Because it's new for a lot of companies. And on top of that, if you fail to comply with these, then you risk huge fines again. You run into negative press or negative social media storms, leading to more brand damage. And of course, brand damage can be a liability for a personal liability for board members of your organization or the C-suite members in your organization.
And a lot of the supply chains are bogged down. You see some major delays shipping from China to Europe or the US, and some companies trying to change lanes. Redirect supply chains from shipping from sea to train cargo from China to Europe. We see now that a lot of containers are stuck on the border between China and Kazakhstan. But there are also a lot of compliancy risk in that matter, because if you are relaying your supply chain, this could also inherent risk on the compliancy side. Yeah,
I mean, anytime you change an existing supply chain, as you mentioned, from ocean to rail, all of a sudden you start touching upon numerous countries that you haven't dealt with before. There are separate country requirements for them. There might be separate requirements for the mode of transport, rail versus ocean. You could run into a number of issues, even some that tap into some of the free trade agreements that you would normally utilize. So it's very important that you're well informed, that you've checked all these boxes on in terms of risk before you redirect your supply chain. Because if you redirect your supply chain to save time and then run into unforeseen delays, then you could be in more trouble than before you made the change.
And should the company, a shipper, outsourcing their logistics, should they rely on their freight forwarders and 3PL companies, or should they have the grip on this matter on their own?
I think it's dangerous to put everything in the hands of someone else. You should always check your sources and get input. But it's important to have an understanding of these things yourself, so that you can evaluate the information also coming from your 3PLs on this.
Okay. You have a lot of experience in your 3PL days and with Uber logistics. So can you give us an example of the risk in this matter?
Yeah. To touch on HS codes, as we have an example, when I was in previous employment, we had an issue where a shipment going into Egypt was hit with really high duties, much higher than we would have normally expected, and a rejection to import the shipment as a whole. The reason for this is that it was a shipment done outside the logistics supply chain and trade compliance purview. So we only got involved when the shipment was stuck in customs, as it was more the norm than you would like. The items that we shipped on this particular shipment were classified correctly in our system, but unfortunately the procurement team had opted for a solution where the supplier would ship directly to our end receiver in Egypt. And therefore, Egyptian customs used the HS codes from the supplier's invoice. Some of these, as I mentioned, led to higher duties on the items we were trying to import. But some of them, because they were incorrectly classified for the Egyptian market on the invoice, meant that they were covered by dual use. So a military aspect in the parts as well, which meant that we couldn't import them into the country. So ultimately, together with our trade compliance team, we engaged Egyptian customs and were able to solve the problem ultimately because we had our trade compliance program proving that the data in our systems was correct, and the basis that we had used for our classification was to their satisfaction. So we were lucky to fix the issue in the end.
All right. But how long did it take to fix it?
I think we were talking more than 6 months for this particular shipment. Wow. Egypt is a notoriously difficult country to ship into. Yeah. And we had unfortunately a few issues that I think the quickest one was solved in 3 months, but some of them were well over 6 months, including this one.
Wow. And even nowadays lead times are getting longer and longer. So talking about HS code, so the harmonized system of products. It sounds like it's all harmonized with product codes, but in reality, it's different.
Yeah, it's critical to know where this ownership lies within your organization. As we saw from the circle, from the trade compliance process map before, there are a lot of involved parties, and it's important to have clarity on who owns this side of the issue in order to avoid the risks, as I just highlighted, but also take advantage of some of the potential savings that are in the market.
And so how do you make sure that you have standardized or harmonized, I would say, these HS codes internally, but also externally? So how do you make sure that you are using the same codes together with your suppliers and your own company?
Yeah, I think it's important that you deal with this, or whoever deals with this are experts, regardless if it's an outsourced solution or internal. It needs to be people that really understand the subject matter. And if you have a trade compliance team, then it's natural to place the ownership there. Yeah. If you don't have it, then I would definitely recommend that this process lives in your organization, where information is entered into the system, either as a result of items coming in to your supply chain flow, or leaving it in terms of sales. This way you make sure that the information going into your system is always correct. It's always good data going in. So everybody in your organization that use this information is able to use accurate and good data, both upstream and downstream in their own workflows. Yeah. So that you ensure that there's only one source of truth for the information in your company.
But to be honest, sales like to sell, and to a lesser extent they are interested in this kind of HS code. So I think the supply chain department should be preferably the one to own this trade compliance issue.
Absolutely, I fully agree that it should sit with the supply chain, so that you free up your procurement teams or your sales teams to do what they do best and get the best deal with be it with your suppliers or be it with your customers.
Yeah, and this in this way, supply chain plays a role both to the suppliers or to procurement and to sales, to make sure that all these kind of issues are all clear to all parties internally.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than trying to sell if you don't know what you're selling.
Yeah, all right. So what are the potential savings in this matter?
There are many potential savings, just like with the risks we went through before. Some of the ones to highlight could be free trade agreements, making sure that you can import easier or potentially cheaper into some markets. And again, you optimize, you increase the number of FTAs that you can use if you have manufacturing sites in different parts of the world for optimization. As we touched on just before, it's important to have your data be consistent and accurate in your systems. It will save you time and money, and it'll allow you to focus on all the aspects of your business that actually make you money. If you do these things, your customers will feel the difference. You'll have increased satisfaction, and you'll have fewer audits that you have to waste time on trying to comply with.
If we talk about potential savings, can you quantify it? You know, what kind of amount of savings are we talking about?
It's incredibly difficult to quantify. We have to stay compliant on this, so I can't divulge any benefits that our customers have had from this process. But it's important that companies invest in this, but how much they should spend and how much they should expect getting back, that completely depends on the type of business they run, the size of their business, and the type of services that they opt for. So that would be down to a personal conversation between the company and an outsourced party such as Pincvision.
Yeah, but you know, if I look at duty costs, those are quite substantial nowadays, and so I think this could be worthwhile to look at.
It could. I think a number of aspects could be worthwhile for the companies, but if you look at duties and you might save a percentage or two here and there, for some companies that's going to be $1 million. For some, it's going to be much higher.
Yeah.
Again, it completely depends on the type of business that you're in, and the size of your business and the size of your spending.
Yeah, makes sense. So, can you give some examples of the savings in certain industries?
Yeah, we have just two quick examples here. If you look at the left, you'll see a mobility scooter. This companies that import this would like to import this under the heading 8713. That comes with 0% duty, and that covers vehicles specifically designed for the disabled. But customs are of a different view. They classify these similar to golf carts, which falls under 8703 and comes with a 10% duty. So there's a big difference in the amount of duty that needs to be paid here. In this particular example, customs and afterwards the courts have agreed that there is nothing on this particular vehicle that shows that it's designed for the less abled, and therefore they've upheld, the courts have upheld the decision in cases. But there are also instances where companies have argued this and actually gotten the word of the court as their support. So there are areas where you can fight the system, if you will. On the right hand side, we see a gift set or packaging for a gift set. Importers of this would like to import it under other packaging, which comes with a 0% duty rate. Whereas customs say that this is the packaging for jewelry cases or perfume cases, that sort of thing, which comes with a 3.7% duty rate. In this case, the court has ruled in the favor of the importers, saying that this type of packaging is not intended for reuse in the long term, and therefore just qualifies as other packaging. So these are two examples, but there are many instances in your supply chain, if you look at it, where you can probably find similar savings for your import prices.
But it's good to know that you have this kind of arguments with customs, so you know what can happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of those arguments do take time.
Yeah.
If you end up going to the courts, then it's not something that's that's clarified in a week. But ultimately, if you get the benefit of the court's ruling, then it'll be highly beneficial for your business.
All right. So let's talk about how to deal with all this. So we have created a checklist, and let's go through it. There are 10 points, 10 critical questions we have come up with. So maybe you could tell the 10 issues you have to address.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, the checklist that you can see in the top right corner is a practical checklist highlighting the necessary requirements for a trade compliant supply chain. And they play an important role. A lot of these items, such as product classification, assessment of trade risks, as we get into them. I'll explain each of them in greater detail, but they've previously played a big role in the ongoing Brexit negotiations between the UK and the EU, and also the trade war between the US and China. And I think after this, the link to download this white paper will be available in the material coming out afterwards. Correct, Martin?
Yes, that's right. Right.
Yeah. So if we start with the top left corner, the origin of products, the question on the list reads, we employ a team of origin specialists to determine the origins of our products. Again, all of these questions are framed as statements, and it's important to note how many of these you say no to. So for the origin of products, regardless if it's an in-house or an outsourced solution, such as ourselves at Pincvision, it's critical that you have experts managing this that can keep up to date on all the latest developments and changes as they might happen across the regions that you're importing and importing to and exporting from. If we jump to one over to the right, for the free trade agreements, the statement in the checklist would read, we have online access to the latest free trade agreements at all times and make maximum use of the information. So again, this is a way of optimizing your ability to import into certain countries and save money by utilizing these free trade agreements. The bottom left states our product master data is complete and correct, digitally accessible, and actively maintained on a weekly basis. So this is something that we touched on in the review of the circle of the trade flow. It's important to have all this up-to-date information so that everyone utilizing the information gets all their calculations right. It ensures compliance throughout your business. It ensures high level of efficiencies, and ultimately it gives you better results as a business.
And as talk about this, you have your bill of material if you have a assembled product. But the parts might change, especially when there's scarcity right now with parts. The suppliers might change in your bill of material, and that you have to keep it up to date to make sure that you are compliant in all that manner. Yeah,
absolutely. It affects obviously your import of those parts. If they come from a different country, your document requirements might be different, and certainly your import requirements could change depending on free trade agreements. But if the product is significant enough in your assembled product, it might even change the origin of your own product for when you're selling it to other customers. So it's very important to have that in place and make sure that experts are reviewing those changes. Okay. If we jump to the middle one in the lower row, covering terms and conditions, the statement is, we work with a select number of terms and conditions and we never deviate from them. So again, this is on your Incoterms with your both suppliers and customers, making sure that you're operating the same way throughout your transactions, both in and out, so you can ensure that you're covered in a compliant way to deal with authorities on these matters.
And these kind of things are also changing quite rapidly nowadays. That people, are changing their supply chain and send it directly to you because they're already late, the goods and the parts. So that's good to know that you have also a good understanding on that matter.
Yes, they change less often than your classifications do from an international perspective. But as you rightly put, the amount of service you want to give your customer in a pinch, if there are delays, it's important to understand anything you do differently on your end will also impact your requirements and obligations internally.
Yeah.
And finally, the last item on this list in the bottom right corner stands for a single central point of information storage. The statement reads, within our company, we have a single central point where we store information about where the same products and components, which are produced in different locations around the world, are in your system and in your supply chain. This speaks again to having one source of truth in terms of this touches so many parts of your trade compliance in the manufacturing, the procurement, all throughout your company. All this data needs to be correct and needs to be usable by the rest of the company, so that you ensure efficiency and not wasting cost and resources.
So if I understand correctly, the Pincvision solution is 100% in the cloud to make sure that this data is accessible for all your users.
Correct. The way our solutions work is through integration directly into your system. Mm-hmm. So we enhance and enrich data and provide that back to you into your systems, so that it's not something you have to access outside of the system. Okay. All the data is fed back into your system, so that your process in working with Pincvision doesn't really change, because the information comes to your own system back again.
But nonetheless, you have a central point of data regarding this matter.
Correct, and you have full audit trails to back up any request from authorities.
All right. So let's get to the next 5 points on the checklist.
Yes. Here, if we start in the top left again, covering import requirements, the statement in the checklist reads, we have central and digital access to all current import requirements, including export documents, product conformity, packaging requirements, and so on, for all our destination countries. So again, this is important to make sure that your supply chain flows when you're shipping into your production or out as sales, reducing any delays on your shipments.
Okay.
The next one across, custom clearance process. The statement is, thanks to active monitoring of KPI performance of various brokers, we have complete control over the customs compliance process. So again, this speaks to monitoring your brokers on their KPIs, on their on-time performance, both on the brokerage, but also on the transportation matter. Making sure that the brokers and the partners that you're using are the right ones for your business.
As we see right now, I'm quite frequently in contact with a lot of manufacturing companies shipping goods around the world. I can imagine there are a lot of differences between these processes, and also the lead time of these different processes with the customs and the brokerage parties. Do you have experience that there are a lot of differences in the lead time, how they handle it themselves, this whole custom clearance process?
Yeah, it comes down to, certainly there are differences between individual brokers, and you should always go for some that holds the high quality as a trademark of theirs. But a lot of it comes down to the countries that you're shipping into. If you ship, if you're importing items into Europe, our system is very much automated, and you can have a very, very quick process where a shipment can be fully cleared and ready to deliver within hours. But you also have countries in the Arab world and the African continent where those things aren't possible just because of the way the process is set up. I think last I dealt with Sudan, you had certain shipment that required upwards of 20 or 30 signatures on various pieces of paper throughout the process to actually clear a shipment into that country. And obviously, when you're relying on a person to physically sign a piece of paper, that becomes a very slow process to deal with.
Yeah, we also saw some pilots in blockchain for importing mangoes from the African continent into Rotterdam. It would take I think 150 documents to sign. Do you see any developments on that matter that blockchain can improve or quicken the whole custom clearing process, or is it just a trial and nonetheless we have to stick to what we are doing right now?
Well, I think we should always strive to improve the processes that exist in the world. In terms of blockchain and if you will, it can tie a bit together with artificial intelligence. I think it's something that a lot of companies are exploring. Mm-hmm. It's a place with a lot of development, but there's a lot of moving parts at this point. And I think the biggest challenge for people involved, be it blockchain for logistics or artificial intelligence, is to read the data and consequently interpret the data correctly. So we think at Pincvision, we think this is something that will become an important aspect of business in the future. But we see it really finding its impasse a few years down the road, maybe on a timeline of 5 years before this really will be something that exists in the market.
Yeah, I agree with that vision.
Yeah. If we proceed on the checklist, in the bottom left corner, we have an export document process. The statement reads as follows: Problems with processing of export documents are never a reason for delays or escalations in our internal logistics process. I think this is one of those things that similar to existing customs process in a country can often be chalked up to the usual delays or expected delays in your supply chain. But this is something that should have a clear path and a clear process within your organization, so that you never have to wait for customs or for export documents for your shipments where they're required.
So the export documents have their own supply chain, I would say, and you hope that this paper trail of export documents will go quicker than the physical goods itself. So another way around.
Exactly. Yeah. There's you have your own process, obviously dealing with chambers of commerce and potentially embassies in your country. Mm-hmm. At Pincvision, when we do fully integrated solutions on export documents, in order to, as you say, have the documents arrive before the freight at the destination, we have a service where we can, in most cases, we can print the document at the destination with the legalized digital stamps on the documents. So you also save money on the transport of the documents down there. Obviously, if there are original stamps or signatures required, then you still need to send it with a courier. But we have solutions for that as well.
So you have an online URL for that export documents, I think.
Yes, we have a web shop for export documents if your volumes are smaller, mm-hmm. Where you get exactly the same services as the integrated model, where we can go for a full service and review your documents and the process that you're using, making sure that what goes to the Chamber of Commerce is correct when it goes. And you reduce the number of rejections you will get from the Chamber of Commerce.
Right. So getting to the next point, screening partners.
Yeah, the statement reads, we always fully screen our suppliers, partners, and customers before going into business with them. And this trails back to knowing your customers, knowing your partners, making sure they don't appear on certain lists for companies you can't deal with. So it's a good trade compliance rule to have, that you're always sure of who it is you're dealing with, both individuals and companies.
To talk about it, Unilever has a problem because Ben & Jerry refused to service ice cream in Israel because of the Palestinian issue. And now it backfired even to Unilever itself. So these are quite complex matters.
Absolutely. It's something that can really cause a lot of problems and commotions, and ultimately brand damage in this case for the Ben & Jerry brand.
Yeah, and even for Unilever as a whole.
Yeah.
And getting to the last point.
Insight in the landed costs. So the statement reads, we have a central and digital insight into the total landed cost for all of our destinations, which gives us complete control of our margins. And obviously, tying back to what you said before about the increased risk by choosing a new supply chain or a new mode of transport, new route for your goods. Mm-hmm. You need to understand how that affects your margins in terms of what you should be selling them for, what it's going to do to your profits to change. We've all seen it now with COVID that dramatically changed our supply chains across the world, to the Evergreen vessel that ended up in the Suez Canal sideways. A lot of these things are going to mean that you have to change your supply chain. And it's important that you know the landed cost for each mode of transport from each country, so that you can manage your business correctly.
Yeah, and if you see how the container prices are increasing from $2,000 to $20,000 or in that range, so that's massively changing your whole your margin schema. And I already know that a lot of companies have a hard time getting this total landed costs per SKU or category, and that it's getting more and more important. Also with the duties changing and the transport costs are changing, mostly upwards. So and also with the cost to serve, it's also something supply chain people talk about. That's very hard to get it clear. This is very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just to finish off, again, you'll see this if you download the white paper, but there's a scoring section at the bottom. Mm-hmm. If you can say no to all these 10 statements we've gone through to less than 3, mm-hmm. Then it shows your supply chain is compliant. If you have 4 to 6 statements with a no, then you're on the right path, but you should definitely look into making further improvements to ensuring compliance in your supply chain. And finally, 7 to 10, you are already exposed to very serious risk, and on top of that, you're also missing out on potential commercial opportunities. So you should definitely look into changing some of these no's into yeses.
You're right. To the audience, feel free to ask questions. We get into the developments. It's a changing world. We're going to discuss. So please feel free to ask questions about all this. I can imagine that there might be some questions about this. So let's go through it. And next we get to the Q&A. We still have got time, but we have still got time also to talk about this kind of developments. So. Let's start to the upper left corner. What do you see happening? Yeah.
Well, now that UK is its own separate trading nation out of the EU, they've implemented their own tariff regime, and companies in that market can apply for reductions or removal of duties for a certain time. And once a suspension is granted and introduced into the market, then any company can take advantage of it. So if you're in the UK market, that's it's important to keep an eye on the suspensions and see if you can benefit from them as well.
I think you also have customers in that area, and you see a lot of empty shelves in the UK and all kind of strains and unexpected problems within the supply chain. Do you see anything typically happen over there, in this matter?
I think you see a lot of companies that have been taken by surprise of the changes and the impact of those changes after Brexit. And I hope to help a lot of the companies realize how they can benefit from that. But this goes much beyond companies importing themselves. It also impacts further downstream, and I think that's probably where the biggest surprise has been for UK companies.
Yeah, and then you see a lot of European companies, backing away from the UK to export to the area, and you see all kind of changes in the economic sense that companies, are not willing to have any kind of risk in that matter.
Yeah, you see it on a number of different fronts. On the transport side, you have trucking companies that operate on one side of the border that don't want to send truckers into the UK from the EU for the fear of them getting stuck, coming back and spending a long time there waiting to come back to their main market, and the other way around for the UK. You've seen a lot of the courier companies simply stop operations into the UK because they're not sure of how custom clearances and that process has to be done correctly. So they've opted for shutting down the service. And I think a lot of logistics companies, freight forwarders, have struggled. I think they're probably the best prepared of everyone. Mm-hmm. Because being compliant and being there to look out for their customers, they started taking a look at this when Brexit was first announced. But I think the amount of custom clearances, the amount of transactions that they're doing, has overwhelmed them a bit, and they're looking for help in a number of these areas.
Yeah, I hope these kind of things will be resolved in the near future, because otherwise the UK will be in a lot of trouble getting the goods in and out of their island. So yeah,
absolutely.
And getting back to the next issue about EU plastics tax.
Yeah, so this is a new tax on non-recycled plastic packaging waste in your supply chain. This is introduced as a new revenue source for the EU, and consequently new obligations and regulations for companies to deal with on the environmental side of their business.
And how big is this issue in your opinion in the EU?
It's something that can impact companies tremendously if they're not set up to deal with this. The level of taxes, if you're not recycling the plastic packaging, can be quite significant. Again, it depends on the size of the business and the size of the footprint, but it's definitely something that will impact the bottom line and the margins for these companies.
I can imagine, it has a big impact in the CPG environment and the retail, but also in the food service environment.
Yeah, this is across the board. Anywhere plastic is used, in the world we use a lot of plastic, also for more than you and I just see on a day-to-day business in our goings around in the world. So this is something that companies really need to watch out for.
Okay. So next to the carbon footprint, the plastic footprint is also being watched by the EU and being taxed.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. And next, what do you see in the lower left corner?
So the dual-use trade controls implemented by the EU are export controls that reflects the commitments made by the EU and the EU countries towards the UN Security Council decisions, nuclear treaties, chemical weapons conventions, as well as biological weapon conventions. So just putting a much stronger net over the dual-use items in the EU trading space.
So basically, products that could be used for military purposes are being watched or controlled. Is that the matter?
Correct. Yeah. They're being monitored to make sure that they aren't used by the bad guys, as we like to say, in terms of chemical, biological, and nuclear warfare or terrorist attacks in general.
But I can imagine that, okay, you have the usual products being monitored, but maybe also some unexpected products could be mentioned as a military product or byproduct, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. In my past, I think apart from all or a few parts involved in the aviation industry, some of the ones that surprised me along my way has been in terms of setting up just regular office infrastructure or video conference rooms. Some of these switches that are used in that world also has a military application. And are subject to some of these regulations.
Okay, I can understand that, but it's good to know that you are onto that topic, that you are not being surprised in this kind of controls. All right.
Absolutely.
And the final one.
The final one is a Dutch specific new transition that's going on. It's the gradual transition from what was known as the GPA process, where you could do monthly import declarations for your business, transitioning into the DMS, which is a management system of your customs duties in the Netherlands. It now requires transactional data, transactional declaration, for everything, and provides a much higher level of scrutiny for all your data as you import it, rather than have that lead time to get your ducks in a row and file your customs declaration.
How do you compare the Dutch customs to other countries in this matter?
I think in the EU they're all relatively connected. But not all EU member states have gone from this delayed declaration process to a transactional one. It's still very much in effect in a lot of countries around the European Union.
All right. So we're getting to the Q&A now. So if some of you have some questions, feel free to ask them right now. If not, we have some 30 minutes after 5 o'clock CET to discuss this matter further. So please, if there are any questions. So my question would be, what are the most typical questions from potential customers nowadays? How to start with all this? Dan?
Yeah, it's it very much depends on the business they're in, but I think they want to see a representation of how these products can help them in line with their compliance and effectiveness of their business. But specific questions is on the customer side and dependent on who comes to us with their questions.
And what you also see right now is that there's more and more cross-border e-commerce, and there are also some issues with VAT. Is this also something you come across, and that could be a starting point to have this kind of conversation?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of companies are worried about meeting the obligations for VAT filings across all their areas of operation. Every country brings with it different challenges and different filing timelines and obligations. Brexit brings in a lot of questions for companies that normally haven't had to deal with some of these things. So that's some of the big things that we see coming at us.
And another thing is, a lot of products or stuff is being imported from China and some other countries. Do you see also changes there? Companies are trying to get a dual sourcing next to China, also from the Philippines or Malaysia and that area. Do you also see some challenges in that area?
I think companies are definitely looking at it, looking at alternatives and trying to see if other countries can bring benefits, be it in Southeast Asia with Vietnam and other countries trying to profile themselves as production countries, or you see a lot of the apparel companies, sort of the textile production, move closer to the markets again, where I think Turkey has become a big country for those companies.
But even Morocco has seen a lot of growth in manufacturing, both textiles and electronics. So see also in that area some moves.
Absolutely, companies are looking into any possibilities they can find, and as you say, Morocco has seen a big increase in this field.
Right, and do you think that the whole VAT issue becoming a hurdle for e-commerce, or in a cross-border sense?
It'll definitely become a challenge for companies in the e-commerce space as countries transition into doing VAT requirements or obligations on a transactional level. Instead of doing your monthly filings, a number of countries throughout Europe now have a very short timeline. I think it's down to a couple of hours to file VAT on transactions and sales across country borders and domestically.
All right.
So that's going to change the process for a lot of these companies.
Yeah. We still have 2 minutes left. Next to this session, we have 30 minutes after talk in Army. So we can go there. So basically, if you want to talk to Dan or myself next, we will be at table 1 on the upper left side. So we'll go into the lounge after this at 5 o'clock. And also, like I said, we've created an IT Super Map Europe with all the vendors, including Pincvision. You can download it on our website. We will make sure that you have the link with the PDF, and we will make sure you have that link. And next, you see the checklist we have discussed during this webinar, available both on the website of Pincvision and our website of Supply Chain Movement. So I was wondering, to wrap it up. So, what do you see as the main advice for the audience to get your supply chain in control?
I think it's the best advice we can give is to take a serious look at this and find a partner that can help you make up for that lack of knowledge that might be in your organization, be it because regulations have changed or people have left your organization with knowledge that wasn't in the system correctly. Whether it's Pincvision or someone else, I think it's critical for companies to take their supply chain obligations, their trade compliance obligations serious, and really dedicate some time and budget to look into this and make sure that you are covering all your bases for this.
Yeah, as a whole, compliance is getting more and more important within a lot of companies, larger ones, especially if you're a listed company. But trade compliance as a specific part of it is just as important.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
All right. I would like to wrap up. It's almost 5 o'clock. Here it is. To the audience, thank you for joining. And if you still have questions or you'd like to talk further, feel free to join us in the webinar. We will be there right after this. So get into the lounge and take a seat at our table or at your own seat. But if you want to talk, make sure that you're all seating with Dan and me. Dan, thank you for explaining all this matter.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay.
It was a good time.
Okay. Thanks a lot. And Pincvision, thank you for having this webinar together. And maybe I see you later in the lounge. If not, maybe I see you next week on Webinar Wednesday. And thanks again for listening in. And see you next time. And maybe I see you in the lounge. Okay. Bye-bye.